All right, good day everyone. Today we're talking about gesture drawing. No, it's not jester, like a jester in a king's court, like the fool, but gesture. So like when you are gesturing with your hands, when you're making movements, when you're etc. Gesture is basically that, making movements. You're drawing movement. It's not so much about the contour. It's not so much about even making it look accurate all of the time. Instead, it's all about movement, about flow, about making things look like they're moving. It's really fast. It's not necessarily a lot of detail. They can take anywhere between 30 seconds and 15 minutes. Obviously, the 30-second one is going to be a lot shorter than, or a lot less detailed than the 15-minute one. But they can be done in that amount of time. So, for instance, even just a couple of lines, that is basically a gesture. You're basically drawing a movement, right? It's if you had, say, like a series of shapes. Let's say you had some circles. Let's say we had a circle here, we had a circle here, and we have a circle here. What we could do is we could draw the contour of what these things actually look like. That would not be the gesture. Instead, you could symbolize these three shapes with a line, right? With a curve like this. That is the gesture. Getting that movement. You get the flow of what is actually happening rather than the details. We don't want to get lost in details. So gesture drawing is basically made up of three different types of lines. The first one is your S curve, so something that looks something like that. Second is your C curve, which looks like a C. It's more of just like a bump. And lastly, and actually most rare, these don't happen a whole lot, you have a straight line. So those are the three tools that we need for any sort of gesture drawing. Let's give it a go. Let's give it a try. I'm going to be drawing number 90 in your booklet. Actually, I'm going to draw number 86. Let's do 86. What we want to do, I'm going to do this in not very much time. Let's put a timer on here. So I'm going to do a 30-second gesture drawing. I'll just put this right here. And again, I'm doing number 86. So here we go. All right, so that took 30 seconds, and what you get is something that looks something like this. You'll notice that it's not totally, it's not detailed. It's not a stick person either. A stick person generically looks something like, you have a head, you have a body, you've got some arms, right? That's not what we're going for. What we have here is we have motion. We have movement, right? So those curves that I talked about are present, right? So here, this line going right through like that, that's an S curve, right? You can kind of see the if you took an S and stretched it out, that's what you would get. They can go both ways, right? But that's a very generic S curve. This mark here is kind of a C curve, right? When you start your gesture drawings, you want to get a long line through the entire center of the body. So you'll notice that it goes from the top of his head. You know, I don't even have a head. I could draw a head in, but I don't even have a head. It goes from the top of his head, down his body, and down through his leg. Now, everything else could also, you could continue refining this. So like for his hips and stuff, you could, you know, put a bit of a C curve for where his hip and his thigh is. You have another one, maybe a bit of an S curve where his calf is, you know. But essentially what we're doing is we're drawing motion, right? It looks like there's motion happening here. Nothing is static. You don't want to look like a stick figure. Okay. So yeah, that's basically the most rudimentary form of gesture drawing. Let's do another one. Let's do we're going to do number 92. And maybe we'll do it in 30 seconds again. Actually, I'm gonna flip this over so I have lots of room. Oh, that's my last page. Look at that. All right, number 92. So let's do 30 seconds again. All right, so again, didn't get very far, but it's still kind of getting the semblance of what it's supposed to look like, right? So if we were to add another 30 seconds, or if you were to keep going with this, you want to start adding more details, right? But always only using S curves, C curves, or straight lines. So let's keep doing that. I'm just going to keep drawing this figure. I'm going to take my time. And I'm not doing any of my joints or anything like that, like we have in the past. Instead, I'm looking just for the movement of what's going on. I don't care necessarily about things being perfect. Instead, we almost want to exaggerate some things, right? So you could even give this a little even bit more of a movement, right? So you have like, instead of having his arm coming out like this, you could have it coming up a little bit more, right? You're drawing movement, right? Drawing tension, you're drawing, movement. So you have this leg kind of comes down like this. We're gonna put the thigh on, and it's kind of, or sorry, the calf on. And it's the same thing. It's kind of like this thing kind of jutting out a little bit, right? Big C curve here for his thigh. You kind of see your S curve here. And you can have points as well, right? You're allowed to have intersections like this. It doesn't all have to be super smooth. And in fact, it probably won't be. But again, we want movement. So these are great ways to do just really quick sketches. There's some great other YouTube videos. If you check out Proko's gesture drawings, you'll have some great great lessons in there as well. And I highly recommend that if you want to get better at gesture drawing, that you look into that. So here's an example of a straight line here, but it doesn't stay straight. It turns into an S-curve right in here. I haven't even done his head yet. Usually I start with the head, tell you guys to start with the head. I haven't even done the head yet. So it's kind of turning a lot of what we've learned on its end, right? So there we have a nice gesture drawing. We have motion, we have movement, we can kind of see things, but it's also exaggerated. It's not quite perfect, and that's okay. It's supposed to be about flow, okay? So you should kind of see these big shapes like this, right? These S curves, some C curves, and you want to get these very rudimentary shapes and then use that as your skeleton rather than these really rigid bones, right? You don't want that. You want to have motion and movement. So yeah, I encourage you to do a lot of these. I spent time on these, but try doing maybe like 10, 30-second drawings all in a row. Once you're done, just move on, keep going. Don't worry about getting everything just perfect. Instead, just get something on, move on to the next one. Then do a bunch of 1-minute drawings. Work your way up so you get faster and faster and faster, so that the initial parts kind of act as a warm-up, right? So when you're running, when you're an athlete, you don't just go run a marathon, right? You train, you warm yourself up, you warm your muscles up before you actually do what you're supposed to do. You stretch. Think of the 30-second drawings as stretches. They're not the main event. And gesture drawings are never supposed to be the main event. You can use them as a basis for a finished drawing, but they should very rarely ever actually, this drawing itself shouldn't be finished, right? I would go ahead and maybe I would use this in another drawing and maybe trace it or something in order to get it into a more finished state. One with shading and details and all that. So that's gesture drawing. Encourage you to practice it. Do it lots. It's actually quite a bit of fun once you get familiar with it. So give it a try.